Perfect. We're back here at the studio, and now actually starting with our last session of today. So we have been doing this since 9 in the morning, and the day actually just have flown past, and a lot of interesting speaks, a lot of interesting insights, a lot of new knowledge to take in. But thank God all these recordings will also be available afterwards and at our YouTube channel, and we can take our time to actually watch and enjoy what we have there. But now, as the last session, we're going to look a bit how the Nordics are shown out in the world, how the Nordics are assembled out in the world, and in what different ways actually the Nordics are doing stuff to support other Nordic people to go out in the world and share those values that we have been talking about the whole day. And together in this session, we have two amazing doers or change makers from the Nordic region. We have Kristian Riis, a musician and entrepreneur. And then we have Mikael von Dorrien, the Senior Innovation Advisor from Nordic Innovation. And together, what unites these two doers in essence is the fact that both Nordic Innovation and Kristian Riis with Nordic LA have built different kind of platforms and locations and places for the Nordic people to find their harbors when they go out to the world, to the United States, or maybe to the Asian continent, and hopefully also a future in the African continent. And to not talk too much myself here, I will next give the turn to our speakers to introduce themselves and tell a bit of the background, what has taken them to this phase that they're now actually driving the Nordic innovation and Nordic capabilities abroad. So first, let's start with Kristian Riis. Could you shortly introduce yourself and tell a bit of your background? What actually took you to drive the Nordics out to the world?
Hi, thanks, Ronnie. Thanks for inviting me. A short story about myself is that I'm actually a musician. I play in a Danish band called Nephew, and we've been around for many, many years. But back in 2014, I decided to move to Los Angeles to write my first solo album. And back then, my plan was just to go to the desert, sit and compose music. But after just a few days, people started contacting me from Denmark and the Nordics, some of my friends and colleagues from especially the music industry, saying, I want to go to LA too. Can you come up with some good suggestions for, who should I meet? Where do you stay? Where do I go out? And so on. And I started helping people. And I was like, this takes a lot of time. So why don't I build a platform where people can help each other? So that was kind of the start of Nordic LA, and now been going since December 2017. And we're also opening an office in Hamburg in next month. So slowly it's expanding. And Nordic LA is here in this world to help the creative industries, both artists, but also creative companies that want to get abroad. Help them showcase their services or formats or outputs, but also kind of bring them together both digitally, now especially in these times, but also physically, of course. So Nordic LA, the Nordic LA platform is a way to meet the people that you need to meet to succeed in your goals in a new market, starting with the US and now soon Germany.
Thank you so much, Kristian. What a pleasure to have you on board, and I'm super excited to dive even deeper into the different things that you're doing. Then we have on the other side, Mikael von Dorrien from Nordic Innovation. What took you in the first place to Nordic Innovation, and what has been your part in building the Nordic Innovation Houses across the world?
It is a kind of a long story. Thank you for the invites, and thank you, Kristian, for good summary. It started up, I work at Almi Invest with investments in small companies. And I started up in 2012 a program called Born Global, where we took Swedish companies to accelerate, and we took the companies to Silicon Valley. And then I discovered that in Silicon Valley there were no Swedish presence. Business Sweden was sitting in finance quarters in San Francisco, and then I'm a bit undiplomatic now, but they didn't have any ground contact with these kind of tech companies, which differ us from Kristian's companies, which are creative. We are focused on tech companies, so to say. So then we started a discussion with the Danish, the Norwegian, the Finnish, and so on. And there was a call from Nordic Innovation in 2014, which they applied for and got the money. And then I ended up at Nordic Innovation, handling and are responsible for the funding for the Nordic Innovation Houses. So right now we continue the success in Silicon Valley with New York, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Tokyo. And of course, there are problems in those places because of the pandemic and so on, and also the political situation in Hong Kong, other problems there. But still, there is interest for Nordic companies to use those kind of houses as a platform or network area and hit the ground running, so to say. I can end there. We can discuss furthermore later on.
Yes, perfect. So what you're both doing seems to have a bit of the similar edge, while kind of like the focus has been maybe a bit different, while Nordic Innovation Houses have been more known that like tech focus side, and then Nordic LA has been more in the creative industries. So my question for Kristian is that in practice, what do you actually do within the Nordic LA framework, and how do you actually help the Nordic companies or Nordic doers or Nordic creatives to come into the markets?
Until the pandemic hits, we did a lot of physical events. We do believe that if you want to engage with people, you have to meet them and you have to show them what you're bringing to the market, of course. So what we did was kind of curating trips to Los Angeles and kind of combining companies from the Nordics, actors from the Nordics with the local companies in Los Angeles. That was varying from architecture, design, contemporary art, music, also looking into gaming, film, TV, and so on, some of the industries that are big in Hollywood and the LA area. Right now, in the last years, we've been focusing on kind of saying, okay, what can we do for some of the players in the Nordics that still want to do business in the US but cannot travel? So we experienced a bigger need than ever to kind of do something. And one of our flagships are definitely our songwriting camps. And what we do there is that we curate and find the best talents in the Nordic countries, writers, producers, composers, and we connect them with the best producers and writers in the US. And then we go to the big production companies like Universal Pictures and so on, and we say, okay, do you have any movies coming up? Can we write music for that? So basically, right now, you can sit in your cabin in the northern part of Finland and write music for Hollywood movies. And I think that's actually a pretty beautiful thing. Another thing we kind of experience is that for some of the writers that might be a little bit more introverted, just sitting in their home, safe home environment studio gives a big opportunity that you can still be part of actually producing music, writing, making business in the US, even though you never leave your own home. So I see also for us now that our future will be built on, of course, again, hopefully soon doing physical events like, you know, working on South by Southwest, the NAMM Music Festival and so on, but also continuing some of these more virtual formats, maybe some hybrids as well. We're doing a Nordic LA Music Summit by the end of April, where we're gathering the 50 like core best music industry people in the Nordics, and then we're matching them with US professionals as well. And I think those formats where we kind of narrow it down, we select the right people, and we really curate to say, don't waste your time. We'll make sure that you meet the right people right away. That's important to you. I think that's a way forward for us from now as well.
I find it extremely beautiful how you have kind of like linked your own background, especially like we can clearly see how the creative musician background is now being empowered into these different kind of models, how to actually take things onward, which kind of takes me to the question then to Mikael about, we have the Nordic Innovation Houses, and you have this amazing Nordic innovation and Nordic background in all the things you do, an amazing support system. So how can we see, like in tools and practices in the Nordic Innovation Houses, that the Nordic tools and best practices are utilized?
I would connect to Kristian because it's actually the same business model, more or less, to connect to the right people. Many companies see Silicon Valley as a green world, but it's really, really a tough environment. And as I advise companies to go there, not to seek finance or capital, not to launch in the US market, but validate the business model of the companies, because it's like the fastest place on earth where you can interact with, as Kristian said, the right people. You can meet the vice president from Google tomorrow for a coffee or things like that. And that's really important, because here in the Nordics, it's very, very hard to connect with the big companies or like the decision maker. But in Silicon Valley, it's much, much easier. And then what we try to do with the Nordic Innovation Houses is to set up a platform, a community and network with the local flavor, so to say. It's another discussion in Singapore, in Hong Kong and in Tokyo and so on. And if we take New York for an example, it's because in Silicon Valley it's tech. In New York you have fashion, you have the creative industry, you have the deep data and so on. And then the house will help to the companies to end up in the right networks, because only on Manhattan there are like 130, 140 incubators. So in which network will you end up? And that's really important for the companies to, so a deep tech company doesn't end up in a fashion hub, so to say. So that's a really important commitment from the Nordic Innovation Houses to help the companies in the right network and meet, as Kristian said, meet the right people in the fastest way.
And I believe strongly that we actually live in this kind of a people's world nowadays. And it's all about those like softer skills, about how we interact with other people and what kind of connections we build with those people. But Mikael, to continue a bit on your point there and to maybe look more concretely, like what are the core strengths of the Nordic companies that actually penetrate these new markets? What can the Nordics come with and punch through the wall that maybe the local companies could not?
That's a very good question. But I think the mentality in the Nordic companies are to manage the companies are in a different base. And it's very, you have to make it very clear. If you go to Silicon Valley, you cannot hire people there because they are like butterflies. So you can have management there, but you do the production in the Nordics, so to say. But I think the mentality in the Nordics set up how we manage the company and people and gender and things like that is not very different, but kind of different, which is really important for the core values of the companies.
Very good. And now we're into the subject of values, and I think one of the biggest things that we've been actually covering during all of the sessions today has been these Nordic values at the center of the things that we do. Kristian, as a musician and a creative side of doer, what have been the Nordic values that has driven you a bit faster when, for example, gone to LA the first time?
I mean, I think it's very important to think about values and also discuss those values. What's also important is like, what kind of understanding do you have about each individual value? You know, I think we can all agree on that we should be inclusive, for example, but what does it actually mean and how do you live those values? Some things that I discovered in regards to the US, and of course, when I talk about it now, it might be a little bit like one-sided, but if you really, you know, try to make a clear picture around it, I think the way that we're managing and running companies and processes in the Nordics is pretty special in a way. Like, for example, in my office here, when I get an intern, I see her or him just as valuable as I am as the CEO. I see, you know, using the competences from people really to add to a company is really important. And honestly, when I look at in general in companies in the US, and of course I'm generalizing now, it's much more like hierarchy driven way of working. And I've been spending some time kind of also teaching my team in the US about how do we work in a Nordic context. Like, I don't care how many hours in the office that you spend a day, as long as you do what you need to do. You just run with the ball. If you have any questions, ask. You know, I trust you in what you do. And I feel like, for example, compared to the Nordics, then the US is much more driven on like rules and laws, and it's more complicated in many ways. So I think if we use like some of the Nordic values where you build a business upon, I think you can get pretty far there. Like, for me, I come from the northern part of Denmark called the Nordjylland, or the northern part of Jutland. And, you know, when people like me move to Copenhagen, where I live right now, they see me as like a country guy. And maybe a little bit slow sometimes, maybe a little bit like, you know, not too cool and so on. And actually, I like being in that position because I think they underestimate a little bit what I can do and what we can do. And the same in Hollywood. Honestly, face it, you know, Hollywood is a lot of plastic, it's a lot of like fake parts and so on, but there's also a lot of business to catch there. So I think if you use your Nordic like grounded approach, your good values combined with understanding the big business of Hollywood, you can get really far. So I would say be smart about who you are. Don't pretend to be somebody you're not. And remember where you come from. I think that's very important because in Hollywood and LA, everyone is visiting, basically. It's only a few people actually coming from Hollywood. It's people coming from abroad. And I do feel that we as Nordics, we have a pretty big staff. People, they kind of trust us. So I think, yeah, just do it, go there and check it out, be yourself and be like for me being from the creative industries, I see there's so much talent in the Nordics compared to how few people we actually are. We have so much to offer. So yeah, just go ahead and do it, I would say.
I have a comment there. Sorry.
Go on.
Because what we have seen in Silicon Valley or in all the other places also, that the further you come from the Nordics, people cannot like look at the difference between Denmark and Sweden or Norway and so on. So the Nordic trademark is extremely strong. So that's why we also see that if we can help the companies in this framework with the Nordic context, it will help the companies and all type of operations, actually, not only companies, because we try to have like different type of organizations and things like that. So this is very important to keep up the Nordic framework high, so to say.
That's a really powerful comment, since I also think that when I've been abroad and I've been talking about Finland, there is always these examples that come out that, oh, you are the country where Nokia phones come from, or you're the country that Santa Claus is from. But these are really like stereotypical examples. But when actually starting to talk about Nordic in a context, then all these bigger things that we're doing are starting to emerge. And I had just before this, we had a really interesting fireside session where we had Konrad Olsson joining from Sweden, from Scandinavian Mind. And the interesting part about what Konrad is doing with his job is to kind of bridge design and tech. So a bit like kind of like putting you together in the same bowl and starting to do things. And my next question actually to continue on the discussion around this subject would be that are you actually collaborating? How much collaboration is there between the creative industry and the tech industry for the moment? And if there is not much, how do you think that we could improve it? Let's start with Kristian.
We are collaborating, and to be honest, the good thing about music and tech is that tech is everywhere. It's really hard to look at the music industry without looking at tech as well. We know that, of course, from the Nordic side, from a company like Spotify, of course. But we are collaborating in many ways. Again, now music is not only what we do; we work in the more broader sense with creative industries, and I do believe that also just within the creative industries, we can learn a lot from each other when we are exporting out to the world. Because when you look at a music company or a fashion company, of course, it's different products, but there's so much similarities that you can learn from. And I think we can be much better in the Nordics to coordinate what we do and to learn from each other. When it comes to Nordic Innovation and Nordic Innovation House, we are working together. We just talked about it before the chat here, me and Mikael actually, that we were supposed to do a big setup at South by Southwest last year, unfortunately canceled due to Corona, but we're working together. And what I also see now in LA and in regards to Silicon Valley is that a lot of the tech companies are also moving to LA. Years ago, we didn't have many tech companies in LA, but now we have something they call Silicon Beach, Venice Beach, and Culver City. A lot of the bigger tech companies have moved there. So it's very natural for us to collaborate. And I think, again, we can benefit from each other's networks because they're very, very different. And again, there's a lot of cross opportunities there because, again, a lot of the music, a lot of the other creatives are built on tech platforms. So we are collaborating, but I see, like, just to comment that briefly, that Nordic LA is a private initiative, it's a private company, but I really do believe in private public partnerships, and that's why it's cool to work with the Nordic Innovation and Nordic Council of Ministers and these different entities. I think the more we can do to get together from different angles, the better we stand.
Thank you. Mikael.
Yeah, creative is tech, more or less. We see that today I read an article that both epidemic sound and sound cloud is now evaluated like a unicorn. Those kind of companies are tech and Spotify, of course. So this is not different matters. It's the same matters, more or less. And I think it's very wise to not to divide those kind of creative or tech. So we should cooperate more. We tried to do it with South by last year, but we didn't succeed in that. But I think the future, it's all is merging into the same kind of business, more or less.
Awesome.
But it's very important for the companies to set up the right business model if you're a SaaS company or how you think you will drive your company, it's very important to be very, very clear on the business model.
I think also like the value in the business models is clear, and that's what taking us kind of like we're giving us the opportunity to grow abroad. What I would next be interested to learn a bit more about from your perspective is that how have the companies in the same environment seen the value in the Nordic Innovation Houses or Nordic LA, that what could you teach to them? Are these foreign companies and foreign organizations interested about the things that you're doing there on their ground, if we can say so? Maybe we'll start with Mikael this time.
Can you
repeat the question?
About the question, yeah.
Yeah. So the question was that how do these companies abroad, when you, for example, go to Tokyo or Singapore, how do the companies there see these Nordic innovation houses? Do they see the value in the Nordic way of doing, and do they want to collaborate with us more because of these places that are there?
I have a very good story about that, because we met like 4 years ago, Magnus, I don't remember his last name, but he started a copycat of Zalora in Asia. They have 2,000 employees. When we met him, he said, had this Nordic cooperation existed like 3-4 years earlier, they have reached like their goals much faster. And Zalora got sold to Alibaba or whatever company a couple of years ago. So he's driving Antler, if you know about it, right now. So what he said is very important, because the network between the Nordic identities is not only companies, it's like the trade promotion organizations, diplomatic authorities on place. And for example, both in Singapore and Hong Kong, we are getting like kind of help from the government because they also see this kind of initiative as very special. So that's also important. Like Kristian said, public partnership is important, especially when you go abroad. And in Tokyo right now, we have a cooperation with like the Japanese Trade Council, who tries to help the Nordic Innovation House, as well as from the TPOs, the Trade Promotion Organization, and the diplomatic branch, so to say.
Awesome. How about Kristian and on the LA side?
Yeah, just a short example is that again, even though that we're a private company, we want to help as many as possible within the creative sector. And for example, recently the Mayor Gassetti from LA, his office reached out to us and said, "Oh, we see that there's a Nordic partner, there's a Nordic player here in LA. How can we collaborate? How can we help Nordic companies to get to the table?" Like they asked us, could we maybe help them invite over some of the best architects in Denmark so they could meet the developers in LA and so on. And they are looking forward to LA in 2028, to the Olympics in 2028. And could we help bring some of the Nordic creativity into making that a more cool setup? And so I guess something like that is happening also because you put yourself forward, you go to the market, you brand yourself, you show that you're there, and then you can be that platform where people can actually meet the right people again. Like also Mikael talked about, if you want to do something, it can be complicated. You need the right connections and the right contacts. So for us, it's also being that link that's actually linking people together, both people that want to go to the US now, but also the other way around. For example, in the Nordic LA Music Summit we do here in April, we realize actually how much American music people and music industry people, they want to go to the Nordics. It's super exotic. Like for us, Hollywood is exotic. The other way around, the Nordics, you know, Vikings, our design, yeah, I can mention everything like that. It's really valuable, and Americans, they love what we do. So we should not forget that we also bring in a value because we have a very, very strong and thriving culture in the Nordic countries.
That's very important what you said, Kristian, because I call it inbound, outbound.
Mm.
First of all, we help the companies out in the world, so to say, but it also to be promoting the Nordics, both to get talent, but also like financing. And the last like 3-4 years, we have seen both Nordic, American and Japanese and Asian money flowing into the Nordics, but also seen talent coming in. And I think it's really important to also say that we do this inbound, outbound to attract talent, because we are in lack of talent in some areas.
Mm.
And to actually continue on that, Michael, I think it's a really, really good point, this inbound, outbound. And what I'm interested about there, and what maybe starts to culminate this discussion we're having here, is that how can we strengthen that Nordic footprint we have abroad, and how can we make the Nordic brand more visible outside? What do you think, Michael? What could we do after the pandemics to strengthen it and make it better?
That's a really good question. It's because it's a kind of problematic, because both like Business Sweden, Business Finland, and so on have been reducing their staff and so on. So I really don't know, because this is a hard question. I think it's just work hard, so to say, from both the companies, and that the companies actually use the Nordic Innovation Houses or Nordic LA or whatever to right now under the pandemic, that they can use those kind of places as ambassadors for the businesses, since you cannot travel. So you use the houses. It's almost free.
Perfect. Kristian, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with Michael. I think it's of high value that you have somebody in the market 24/7 all year round. I see a lot of people coming to LA and they are there for a week and they have great meetings, and then they go back to the Nordics and nobody calls them, you know, and they're super, super sad and disappointed. So I think like the reason why I created Nordic LA was to give people a chance to be there all the time, like 24/7, to have a team on the ground there. So to get on from the pandemic here, I think it's important now that we keep pushing forward, that we don't give up. We see some countries, they tend to, you know, close the borders and stay for themselves. I think right now is actually the time to show the world, also from the Nordics, that we really want to interact with them. We are totally dependent on international trade and to be part of a global society. And I think now it's time more than ever to break down borders and walls and show that dialogue and co-creation is the way forward. So, I mean, just keep pushing it. Again, we open an office in Hamburg now. Hopefully next year we'll do that in South Africa. So we'll continue, we'll go on the journey, and everyone that want to join are mostly welcome.
That's very important what you said now, because now is the time for the companies to take market share. Mm. You have to step on, not step off.
Exactly.
So for Nordic companies, it's like a golden opportunity to take market share. It's kind of weird to say that, but but I think it's very important.
And I actually agree with you both in this, that I think now is the time for companies, for organizations, and for the academy to come together and formulate this kind of like triple helix, how do you, a triangle like this, a triangle where we have all these different parts actually collaborating together and going together towards like that more integrated Nordic brand out in the world. And I think this kind of sums up really good the question, the discussion that we have had here. So showing the Nordics in the world, and one of the key requirements for that is actually collaboration between all the partners that are out there and all the different participants. Yeah. And to sum up the conversation, we're starting to run out of time, unfortunately, but my favorite question of the day this far has been, what do you love about the Nordics? And this time, let's start with Kristian.
First of all, the Nordics is my home, and I will probably live here all my life. I've been traveling around the world for many years, but I love coming home. So that's what I love most about the Nordics. When that's said, of course, I have a huge respect for being part of society where we take care of the weakest, where we pay a lot of tax, but actually I'm happy to do that because I think it's important to know if you get ill, you get help. If your family or friends get ill, that the equality is the status of equality is better here than other places in the world. Not saying that we can't improve. I see some big challenges now, especially in the real estate area that I'm looking more into as well. Affordable housing is a problem. We have to take care of our systems and what we do, and I think it's important to hold on to that. But also now to inspire the world. It's important that we don't go on crusades. It's important we go and we come in peace and spread the good word and inspire people. But also that, like I heard in the last talk, that we also get inspired. Like we learn from people out there. We open our minds and our hearts towards what's going on around the world. And then we go out and participate either physically or online. It's luckily you can do both. So I guess that's what I love about the Nordics.
Amazing. Is this inbound and outbound again that Mikael was mentioning? So,
exactly.
Mikael, what do you love about the Nordics?
That can be a long story, but I started earlier. I started businesses in US, in Singapore, and Tokyo, and so on. And every time I came home to Gothenburg, I was really glad because you have a special mentality here, which we cannot say that we are like the best in the world, but you have to be humble and also take like impressions from other parts. But it's really good place to live, because when you have been in Tokyo or whatever, it's really tough to live there, and it's much easier living. And also, I think if we talk about gender and discrimination, of course it's a problem, but I think that it's not much better, but I think it's easier here in the Nordics for both women and people coming from other places. I don't say we don't have a problem, but it's kind of easier. So yeah, that's my last remarks.
Amazing. I can relate to both. And now, unfortunately, we're running out of time. So just to sum up the conversation quickly, we had Nordic Innovation House on the other side, Nordic LA on the other. And both of these amazing platforms are helping our Nordic companies to go out into the world, but also to create this kind of footprint of the Nordic brand values and doing within foreign countries. And if anyone out there is listening and thinking about expanding, I think that Mikael and Kristian will be two people you should reach out to. And I'm also looking myself forward to what we can do together with Nordic Innovation, Nordic LA, and Norders now in the future, as we have this grassroots of young people moving onward, wanting to increase, wanting to do these things. And 2021 is a start and hopefully also an end of a pandemic, but the start of new and extremely interesting things. So now with these words, I want to thank you a lot for joining today's session. I will be continuing the dialogue with you after this, but I also want to wish you the happiest Nordic Day 2021 and wish you an extremely fun and sunny week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll continue soon again.